wanted to go a bit higher level. I'm happy to talk personally if you have any questions, and I'll mention some things I've done. But I've been thinking a lot about this question of customer development, and higher level I would call it getting traction, i.e. the end result of customer development should be finding real customers in a real market, which I would call getting traction. This thing is going to keep turning off every 2 minutes. So I've been, the last 3 years actually, after I started angel investing, I've been thinking about this problem and watching companies succeed or fail in the pursuit of this early traction. So not this kind of middle tier growth, but what makes you get, what makes companies take off or not take off at the beginning. So I want to kind of walk through this, what I think were the kind of the top 3 mistakes I'm seeing, at least my personal framework. So mistake number 1 is not taking customer development seriously. And you're all here, so you're taking it somewhat seriously. But by seriously, I actually mean, or I think what you should be doing is of equal importance as product development, which literally means you should be spending 50% of your time on it and also doing it in parallel with product development, which I hardly see anywhere on startups that are pitching angel investment or just a generalist. A lot of founders start and they focus on product, even if they have one founder, tech guy, one business guy. They bring the business guy to do it QA and non-business activity, non-tech activities that are still not trying to get traction. So I think that it kind of has to be risen to the level of 50% time, which has a number of kind of corollary benefits. It first means that it becomes core to your business, so you shouldn't be outsourcing it. So you wouldn't outsource your search engine marketing initially or your SEO initially. You should be trying to do all that yourself and figuring it out. The other thing you get non-intuitively about doing it in parallel is it actually improves your product because it necessitates you to be talking to customers right from the beginning, and it'll change your product roadmap immediately. Whole other case of startups I see asking for product feedback, because I love getting product feedback, and my main product feedback is always, why do you have 10 features before you, at least 10 features before you've launched already? Because people just want to keep building and building, but they haven't actually talked to anyone. And I know it's just like advice you hear over and over again, but people just won't do it. I'm not really sure why. So the other thing it improves, just to give you more of the hard sell, is if you don't outsource your customer development, as you start to get traction, it really helps your hiring plan because you know who to hire on the business side. A lot of tech founders find that very difficult. But if the tech founders are doing it themselves, they really know when to hand off. I need to hire a BD person, or I need to hire, or now's the right time to outsource my search engine marketing, when it kind of rises to the level that you're doing it many hours a day. The other real benefit about it is you end up, when you launch, with a whole subset of users. So you've seen a lot of the really successful companies over the past few years, especially consumer-facing companies like Mint.com and Dropbox. They all started when they launched with tens of thousands of people on their beta list. That's really because they started doing this customer interaction in parallel. And we'll get to how that worked in a second. But just to close this, number 1 mistake out is I made this mistake myself multiple times. So my first company didn't go very far, and really I spent 0 time on this. It was all product, so I was the perfect example of messing this up. Second company, I pendulum swung the other way, so it ended up being a successful exit, but I spent hardly any time on product development, 100% on customer development traction, and we got it, but we ended up with a product that wasn't a long-term sustainable business, so we really kind of had to exit. And we ended up exiting at a good time, which I guess is anything. But so I kind of went too far, and then on DuckDuckGo, I've really taken that advice to heart, and I really spent 50% of the time from the get-go trying to find people interested in the product. So that's mistake number 1. I spent so much time on it because I think it's the most important. So number 2 is, after talking to a lot of companies hard to emulate people's success because companies get early traction in a number of different ways. I count like 20 ways. And then they're repeatable. You see them over and over again, but it's very hard to predict which initial way was successful. So like you were mentioning, now you do trade shows, Salesforce early on. You did something else, and you see people doing success off of SEO, SEM. And the mistake here is that you're biased. You walk into your company biased towards particular, I call them traction verticals. Mainly because you've heard of them before, so there's availability bias. Everyone's heard of Google AdWords, so a lot of people start there. You're biased, negative bias towards some, so a lot of people have negative bias towards affiliate models, because they think they're scammy, and similarly toward SEO. But there's plenty of companies who have succeeded, and that's the thing that's made them take off. And so you have to get around that bias. And the approach that I like to take leads into the third mistake, which is people don't take a scientific approach to getting traction when they should, a quantitative approach. And the framework I've been trying to develop is, list out all these verticals, and I've been trying to do that, and look at all of them, and based on your business and business type, enterprise, consumer, your type of market you're entering, whether you're in a niche market as a niche player or you're picking a new market, certain ones will be more attractive than others. Pick, the 5 that are most obvious that related companies have been successful in that market area, and go after all 5 of them in parallel, using kind of a Wix-Arb approach, doing experiments with little amounts of money to see if you can make any headway, and then focusing on the 1 or 2 that actually work. This is, as opposed to what I see people normally do, which is pick one, do them in serial, and spend lots of extra money, wasting money on one after the other. And if none of those 5 work, then you back out like a concentric circle and you pick the next 5. But as you do that, you're not wasting all your angel money. You have enough to burn through until you find something that kind of gets you a little bit of traction. And the reason for doing that is, after talking to a bunch of people the successful people, oftentimes they couldn't predict which kind of vertical worked for them, whether it ended up being SEM or even billboards, which has worked for me a bit. There are things that people never consider, like infomercials, actually work for certain companies, work really well. And because it's hard to predict, you actually have to try a bunch to see what works. Let's see. The last point I'd like to make is that the interesting thing about picking kind of non-traditional verticals is that your competitors aren't picking them. And so you'll be, it's much easier to reach customers through these kind of non-traditional means. You'll have higher conversions and it's easier to get initial traction. That said, once you've got that initial traction, moving to the different phases, and I like your slides in different phases of the company, like you usually have to, when you grow a lot quickly, it's usually a step function. All of a sudden people discover what you're doing, you have a huge step function of growth, and then you kind of plateau again. When you come out that side, the things that work for you to get that step function usually aren't the same to get the next step function. So you kind of have to redo the process and rethink what you're doing. That's the mistake I see people making is you want to emulate what just got you successful, but then you can't do that because it won't really move the needle for you anymore. That's it.